How did crypto bros become such a powerful political force?
They should not be subject to the same regulation as banks.
Why is the right considered today's counterculture?
They're all way better than this!
When did clean energy become too lip-coated?
Confront the climate crisis.
Just some of the stuff we explore in the Culture Lab, the marvelous mad science of how the zeitgeist shapes our politics. Hosted by data scientists and pollsters, Kyla Van Ellenfitch and Gabe DeRoche. Join every week as they bring together data, their own insights, and a special guest to put a different loaded question under the microscope. Culture Lab, a brand new podcast from Air Quotes Media, creators of Curse of Politics, The Hurly Burly, and Hotel Pacifico. Subscribe now.
Happy Budget Day, Geoff.
Same to you, Mike. It's always a critical day on the political calendar, and this year more than ever, probably.
I hope you're feeling nice and refreshed after a week off the pod.
I could be more refreshed, but I couldn't make it to the lockup for personal reasons, so I've locked myself up here in my dining room with the documents, and I hope I have mastered them. You'll probably find a lot of reasons to correct me, but quite a slew of stuff that you guys were locked up with all morning in Victoria.
Well, I would prefer to be locked up on a Gulf island rather than be locked up with
yeah, the view is better.
200 of my closest stakeholder friends.
The food was good. Are much better. Oh, you had good food, eh?
It was good. It was BC sourced nutrition.
Okay. Excellent.
Well done.
Excellent.
Lockup organizers. But we're here to talk about the budget today.
Mm-hmm.
But before we do, obviously, since we recorded the episode last week, the events at Tumbler Ridge unfolded, and we've seen that unfold, and the gripping stories that came from the survivors of the shooting, and the impact it's had on the community. What can you say, right?
It certainly completely upended life in the province. I mean, many people laugh at the throne speech and say nobody listens and all that kind of thing. But in my experience, the throne speech, which had to be canceled out of respect for the events in Tumbler Ridge and the need for political leaders to participate in those events, has always been sort of the starting point of the political cycle and a place that forces the government to reflect on what it wants to say and the media to listen and see whether they see any substance there. And that was canceled. And instead we had those remarkable services from Tumbler Ridge and the more and more stories appearing. And then today, the first tributes in the House, the first statements in the House by the political leadership of the government and the opposition. So yeah, a complete change in the political calendar.
Yeah, it's as tragic, obviously, that these events are. It was heartening to see how people pulled together, and the vigil, which I saw broadcast live, I guess on the weekend. Can't remember which day it is now. It was good to see the political leaders of all stripes show up, be there, work together. Obviously, they're not as important as the people in the community or the people that went through that incident, but it was nice to see in this particular instance that everyone was seen to be pulling together and doing and saying the right things.
Well, and despite the horror of the events and the tremendous loss of life, which is just impossible to sort of take on board, there were so many heartening subtexts and events and stories that occurred from the response of the first responders and the speed with which they got in there and the tremendous way the entire community pulled together. There were many, many heartening stories about how British Columbia communities, particularly rural communities, find strength and solidarity at points like this. So I think obviously there's going to be many, many conversations and deep dives into this in the months to come, because so many threads of critical issues in BC were brought together by the tragedy, including mental health issues and policing, and now a whole new school is being stood up in a week so that the kids have a safe place to go. So it's some dramatic reminders of how communities can pull together and do pull together in the face of some of this adversity.
Yeah, you've been a chief of staff. I've been a chief of staff. We've been through those experiences when your best laid plans go awry because of external events happen. I didn't have anything quite to this magnitude, but around the time, I think it was around the time I was serving in the premier's office, there was a major explosion at Burns Lake at a sawmill
Oh, that was
that
terrible. Yeah.
devastated the community. Lives were lost. I can recall everyone just stopped and pivoted. You went through lit wildfire and atmospheric river. I'm sure you've got
Well, the one
your
that
many
I
tales
went
to tell.
through, I missed, and I still remain stunned by the fact was the heat dome,
Yeah,
which happened over a weekend, and we got up in the morning on Monday morning, not quite clear what was going on, and by noon it turned out that hundreds had died over the weekend. The final toll estimated by the coroner service was 619 British Columbians died in about a 48-hour period due to the
yeah,
heat dome, which was like two airliners crashing. But life was so hectic with the fires, as you say, and then later the
yeah.
atmospheric river that the whole province just moved on. There wasn't the same kind of visibility to that catastrophe as there was to Tumbler Ridge.
Yeah, it's well, anytime any of these tragedies happen, it's if you're serving in government, many of our listeners do, um, you just have to shift your focus to what's there right in front of you, and then at some point you can get back to the normal course of business. But in government, it's often never normal. It's often there's always something around every corner, not
Hmm.
to that
Hmm.
magnitude necessarily, but it's always something that's going to blow you off course, and it's getting used to that can be challenging. I think in the week ahead, we can reach out to MLA Larry Neufeld from Peace River South and get a better handle on how the community's doing and report back to our listeners next week. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll just put it out here now. I'll invite MLA Neufeld if he has time to spend a few minutes with us and give us an update from the community,
Hmm.
if he's so inclined. So, um, okay, so.
Budget.
Back to business. The budget table today. We're recording this, about 2 hours or so after the finance minister stood up in the legislature. I was in the lockup today, locked up. Geoff was self-imposed lockup, having a little nap. Um,
Constantly refreshing my screen to see when the documents would finally be there.
Yes, this week we want to pause to remember and honor the lives lost in the horrific tragedy at Tumbler Ridge. It's in moments like these that what's really important snaps into focus and the rest falls by the wayside. Nothing can help make sense of the tragedy, and there's no way to adequately express the sympathy we all feel for every family impacted and the entire community of Tumbler Ridge. For a moment, that grief unites us all across BC, Canada, and even around the world. From all of us here at Hotel Pacifico and presenting sponsor Talus, we offer one thing that we can at such a time: a moment of silence to remember the lives lost and honor the families and community left shattered, dealing with the aftermath. Please hug your children, your friends, your family, and neighbors a bit tighter, and keep all those impacted in your thoughts. The TELUS Health Crisis Support Line has been activated in Canada and is available to anyone. Call 1-844-751-2133 for free professional emotional support and/or referral to community resources.
what's your one word that sums up this budget, or your phrase that sums up this budget?
One word. Well, I think poor Finance Minister Bailey has tried to do something for everybody and probably succeeded in pleasing nobody. Her I don't think that she'll be the most hated person in BC as she feared before the budget, but there's a little bit of everything here. I wrote down her goals were to protect and improve core services, keep taxes low, and reduce the deficit over time. Those were her strategic goals. Hard to do all those three things at once, and she made a valiant effort. And I'll debate with you, no doubt, about how critical some of these goals are, because in my view, some of them are more critical politically than they are fiscally. But then the tactics that she was using included making the public service leaner. I think we're going to hear a lot more about that in the days and weeks to come. Pace infrastructure. She's slowing down the delivery of key infrastructure projects, although there's still
The term, Geoff, is repacing.
repacing. Okay.
Repacing.
Okay, thanks for that. That wasn't in my cheat sheet, so I didn't have. And generate revenue.
Mm.
But the headline is taxes up, deficit up.
Deficit way up. My one word is drift. I feel like that this government is drifting. It's ostensibly trying to deal with the deficit and this whole situation, but the deficits are actually getting worse. Public debt is going way up. There's nothing dramatic about this budget. There's nothing.
No.
I don't think there's anything particularly
But it's
bold
certainly
about
not a
it.
pre-election budget. And in a minority, they're not in a minority.
Or
but
is it? Is it?
is it?
Are they playing it too safe because they think they could be in that situation? You
I
know,
don't know. I don't
I
know.
mean, it's almost like they're holding out for a bit of luck here and some growth that maybe they will exceed projections, and next year there'll be a better narrative. But
Well, you look
it's
at the throne speech would have been a bit of an elevator speech that would help us decode some of these questions.
yeah,
But if you look at the more recent statements by Brenda Bailey, first of all, it should be hated because it was so tough. She was using terms like austerity and not quarreling with anybody who said that. Then when the throne speech was canceled, a senior official in the premier's office gave us a quick briefing to the press gallery where there was a bit of an orientation towards restraint as opposed to austerity, a distinction without a difference in many respects, but still one of acknowledging this attempt to protect public services. But never one, there was no mention about affordability, no discussion about housing costs, particularly. A number of the key themes of the last couple of years are not there. So it's hard to see what the measure would be for success.
I
And
don't
so the
really think
frame
it
became
leaned into
deficit.
anything in terms of sales pitch.
No, no,
Even the stuff that they've been talking a lot about lately, like major projects and economic growth, it wasn't really a central part of the narrative.
no.
In fact, we'll get to this in a few minutes, but they're talking about critical minerals all day long, and they cut the mining budget by about 25%. So I couldn't figure that one out. But the cover of, for those watching on YouTube, the cover of the budget is resplendent with transmission lines and I think that's people working in labs and growing trees and things like that. Um, there's one guy who might be he's lying in a hospital bed with two doctors overlooking him. That might be a terminal diagnosis. I'm not sure. So better be careful which visuals they use. Um, but I just want to read out these debt figures, though. I mean, the public debt is really quite staggering. So I can't tell you what the debt was in 2017 when the forces of good left office, but I think it was probably less than 50. I stand to
I
be
don't
correct
have
on that.
2017 on my fingertips, but
Yeah. I got to go back to the 2017 budget, but it was the debt GDP at that time was I think around 15%. Um, Debt is as of this year is forecast to be 154 billion and expected in 3 years to be 234 billion. It's going to be by the end of the 3 year plan 37% debt GDP ratio. So, which is a measurement of debt to the size of the economy. So that's we were always very terrified of going over 20 on debt GDP, that terrible things would happen with bond rating agencies if that happened. Multi-year finance ministry staff scare tactics of keeping the political people within the guardrails. Clearly, those finance ministry staff retired because the guardrails of the car has gone off the it's gone off the road on an
well,
icy
but this is
corner
where
in the middle of a wintry storm here.
here's where I have to be a contrarian. I mean, the reality
Okay.
is that the United States debt to GDP is 3 or 4 times this share. We're this third best province in Canada in terms of this. Quebec and
Well,
in
are
a
we
term,
still the
you know,
third?
well, we're in good company. We have lots of company at this level. We were by far the lowest for a while with Alberta. Now we're up in the middle of the pack, and Canada itself on average has a bigger ratio. So although this has become a huge talking point and an obsession, especially with the business community, the opposition,
With
it's
me.
not. This is and you yeah. I would say politically this is a huge problem, but practically the province is not in bad shape. Our
Well,
employment
Geoff,
numbers. Well,
hold
now let
on a
me
second
finish
here,
my
though.
pitch. I mean, we've got a long
Okay,
show ahead of
okay.
us here, Mike. I got to get my stuff out. The
That'll-
I mean, our employment numbers are good. We're not as exposed to the economy to tariffs as much as other provinces are. We don't have the same manufacturing base. We have opportunities to do these big revenue producing projects. Now, we're not going to be able to cut our way out of the budget. I don't think the government has made anything like that case. But it's tried to make, I think, with this budget, every case, and none of them are closing the deal. So the numbers on the debt and deficit are not going to destroy the province as we know it. But the trajectory and the inability to sort of project a return to balance has been the thing that's bedeviled, especially the
well,
EB
there's no plan to
administration.
return to balance.
Yeah,
That's for
well,
sure.
it's to grow the economy, but that's not said
Yeah,
outright
but there's
either.
no plan
Yeah.
to return to balance. At least they're not even bothering to try to put forward that fiction. Uber Eats might bring dinner, but this hydrogen truck is delivering the future. That's right. A hydrogen-powered grocery truck has been driving around BC. This is a full-size Class 8 truck that made real deliveries between the Lower Mainland and Squamish. The demonstration brings together a broad partnership that includes our sponsor, Fortis BC, Loblaws, H-Tech, the BC Trucking Association, Transport Canada, and the province of BC. Together, they have launched the first sustained commercial demonstration of a hydrogen-fueled heavy-duty truck in the province. The goal is simple: see how this technology actually performs when it has to deal with hills, traffic, weather, and deadlines, just like every other truck on the road. Since mid-October of last year, it's logged hundreds of kilometers and has generated real-world data on things like range, fueling, and performance. Fortis BC is supporting the project through its Clean Growth Innovation Fund to help make the demonstration possible. As part of a broader effort to explore lower carbon solutions for sectors that are especially tough to decarbonize, and heavy-duty trucking is right at the top of that list. The insights from this pilot will help inform future decisions about hydrogen vehicles and infrastructure in BC. It's a practical, real-world example of how collaboration and innovation can move the conversation on lower emission transportation forward. Fortis BC, energy for a better BC and a better podcast. But Geoff, the last number of budgets, there's a slide in the slide deck that says BC's debt at a reasonable level or BC's debt at a sustainable level. And it's like we're slowly getting cooked on the pot here. The trajectory of the increase in debt is what's new.
That's right.
And
I agree with that.
the
That's it. That's
trajectory is at a very unsustainable level. And the finance minister said that herself. She said, I don't know if she said in the actual budget speech, but in the pre-lockup presentation, that the increase in public sector growth has outpaced our ability to pay for it. And that was under, this government's watch. And now it has to be brought back to a sustainable level. So they've acknowledged that the public sector growth is unsustainable. And so their answer to that is reduce the public sector by 15,000 full-time equivalents or 15,000 jobs over the next 3 years. 2,500 would come from core ministries and government, and the rest would come from way out there in the public sector, like school districts and health authorities and crown corporations and so forth. But I was at least glad to hear that there's at least an admission that things got a little out of control and they've got to reel it back in. But this is in the context of they've just done all these labor deals.
Yeah.
And so they've baked in all these extra costs that are beyond their ability to pay for. So what's the reckoning going to be?
Well, I think it was surprising to me to read in the Globe and Mail this morning that Paul Finch, the head of the BCGU, saying, you know what, this is manageable, particularly if they take out management positions. There's been a bloat in that level and so forth. And the government says they will try to focus in that area. But I think Paul Finch knows, and I know, and you know, that you cannot cut out managers and make big savings. You can cut out managers and make things quite a bit worse if mismanagement occurs and that kind of thing. The strike that was conducted last year by the BCGU, which is they have the right to do that, that's how it all works, was very expensive and is now rippling across the public service. And so part of the way that governments deal with those increases is to cut jobs. And it could be quite a few jobs. It's not exactly clear how that will be done, although recently the minister's been talking about certain HR tools and so on, which may involve early retirement and that kind of voluntary measure. But those have their own costs and take time to show savings, although they may over time. What's more likely, especially if there's an election and the government changes, is that there's involuntary reductions.
Oh, yeah.
And big time. And we'll see how that goes, or a resort to privatization or
Yeah, and the deeper
automation.
the deeper the problem, the more radical the solution in a government change. Like
Yeah.
you might just see liquor stores just sold, right?
That's right.
Or ICBC privatized or something like that. So I don't know what presumably the conservatives are going to say about those things, but this does, recalling 2001 era when Gordon Campbell came in, they really turned government upside down and made lots of changes, and some of them came back to haunt them, right? Like the breaking the HEU deal in particular. But a lot of things they did do were sustained and became the new norm of the way government was done after that, like redoing the health authorities.
Well, there are several reviews. They're reviewing the health authorities, and there's some other reviews that are putting in that they're implementing, post-secondary education funding and so on. It's hard to know what those reviews are going to produce, what the terms of reference are. I haven't seen that publicized anywhere. I know that a very senior public servant who's utterly bipartisan, Don Avison, is doing the post-secondary one, but funding of post-secondary education, or maybe he's doing K to 12. I've lost the plot of it here. I think he's doing post-secondary. It's been a long-standing headache and has been complicated now by the loss of a lot of the international student revenue. So these changes will take a while to design and then longer to implement. But it's interesting to see the government back off on some changes, like childcare, which is an issue close to my heart, was not cut. There's kind of a pause there. Rumors of income testing turned out not to be the case. There's a small increase in childcare, but not a significant attempt by the government to put childcare in the context of an economic strategy where it's supporting, parents and especially women to be in the workforce. It's just there as something they're going to continue to try to dwell on.
Well, and Sharon Gregson was on the news this morning, and she's, I didn't get a chance to talk to her at the lockup. I want to say hello. So Sharon, I'm sorry I didn't say hello to you. But she's been a one-woman battering ram on the issue, and probably helped keep it out of the glue to some extent in the budget. I'm sure she's got concerns regardless.
Her line was relief, not celebration. That's what she said.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Well, let's just talk briefly about what's up and what's down in terms of the ministries. I mean, healthcare, biggest item in government, at about $36 billion budget right now. It's getting 3% increases going forward, and so is education, K to 12 education, which includes childcare, education, childcare, and the post-secondary. The terms keep changing. Advanced education, post-secondary, whatever it's called. That's going up 2%. So they're kind of in. I'm not even sure I'd call it sustain mode because those will be real cuts.
Yeah.
Unless they find efficiencies.
Given inflation and the cost of the settlements, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And perhaps healthcare is going to get a break because we've actually had population decline in the last year. We're actually losing people in BC. So if we were having these immigration spurts, there'd be more pressure on the healthcare system, but there will be more pressure because of aging population. So it's not going to be an easy time for health authorities in the years ahead. It's not going to be easy time for school districts. So those inevitable cuts that will trickle down to the local level will become stories that will trickle up to the provincial level.
Well, let's take primary care just as one example. There was a study done by the CCPA recently, which reinforced what I'd heard anecdotally, that the big changes that were made while I was still in government to support family doctors and encourage recruitment and retention were leading to more family doctors, all right. But the caseload was going down per family doctor as they switched to these new funding models. So you're not getting a one-for-one replacement. The additional revenue that's helping with the recruitment is not actually leading to an equivalent increase in the size of the caseload, which just underlines the difficulties of a lot of these issues. It's very, very difficult politically to have a fight with family physicians, especially when you want more of them and have them happy. But this is going to continue to dog the healthcare systems that tries to make these reforms and do things like eliminate faxes for prescribing certain crazy things that keep on going that are tough to do. So these efficiencies are desperately needed and may not cost jobs, but they're hard to do and hard to produce savings with them.
We all use things every day made from steel, everything from household items like your refrigerator to critical infrastructure like bridges and rail lines. And a key ingredient in about 70% of all steel production is steelmaking coal. Located in southeast BC, Elk Valley Resources is not only Canada's largest producer of steelmaking coal, they're also one of the world's largest seaborne exporters. They operate 4 mines in the Elk Valley region of BC, providing family-supporting jobs for around 5,500 people. I've been to a couple of these mines. They're impressive, and so are the workers that work there. Elk Valley Resources contributed approximately $5 billion in direct GDP to BC in 2024, which equals around 70% of the province's entire mining sector, highlighting their role as a key economic driver of the provincial economy. With a focus on operational excellence and environmental responsibility, EVR is providing a key resource the world needs today and into the future. You can learn more about how Elk Valley Resources is creating lasting benefits in BC by visiting their website at evr.com. So not all ministries had cuts or were leveled out. MCFD, Child and Family Protection, or Child and Family Development, actually had a significant increase, as did social development, housing. I think social development got a bit of a bump too. So sometimes like MCFD cannot get the love. It seemed to get the love. At least I'm not sure what's driving those increases.
Well, this was a reform in the delivery of services to children with disabilities, including children with
Yeah.
autism. And I'm having a hard time reading this one as well. The Jody Wickens, who I think is very capable, was trumpeting it before the budget. And you'll recall that David Eby didn't like the changes that were proposed by the Horgan administration, and during his leadership run promised to kibosh them, which he did. So the plans that were in place as a result of the Horgan cabinet's considerations were canceled, and then Betsy Dean then left government as well and didn't run again. Jody Wickens is the new sort of most currently most long-serving minister in that portfolio for a while. So she's brought in these changes, and it's not clear to me how they're going to affect, especially kids with autism, which is what he was focused on when he came into the leadership. But so initially, the comments from the autism community were positive. How far-reaching they are, I don't know.
Yeah. So then there's some other ministries that are basically frozen for 3 years. Attorney General, Public Safety, which includes corrections.
Pause there for a sec. That
Sure.
is a strange one.
Yeah.
I mean, you have an extortion crisis raging, and whether more money would solve the problem or not, I don't know. Nina Krieger's done a good job of creating a more coherent leadership structure among the police, although she cannot, as a politician, directly interfere. She counts on the police to produce that. I think that we have yet to see any results from this increased coordination. There's new leadership at the provincial level with the RCMP, but the idea that you're going to solve the extortion crisis without some increase in policing costs, I think, is not the case.
Let everyone out of jail and don't arrest anybody. It won't cost anything.
Well, we give more support to people who are collaborating with the police, for example, as criminals who testify than we do to victims of extortion. If you want to put your hand up and say, "Hey, I'm being extorted," that's a very difficult place to put yourself in. You'd be paying a big target on yourself, and so there's $500,000 there, I think, to support victims. Sure, that's good, but that's going to be totally insufficient if they really want to bring people forward.
So there's going to be a crunch in some of those ministries. Then in the dirt ministries, referring to natural resource ministries, agriculture cut, mining cut, forestry cut, environment had a cut, about 5%.
Yeah.
Energy is about level. So, and that's not uncommon too. When when government needs to tighten its belt, it's the dirt ministries often get hammered. Now, the question is, will any of those cuts lead to slower permitting, processing that enables economic growth? That's something we'll have to watch for. So I don't think we covered all the ministries, but that gives you a flavor that who, you know, how they're handling this. Overall, it's a 4.4% spending increase. And a lot of that is the increase in debt payments. So going back to like, is this sustainable? Like the cost of interest payments on the debt is going to go from like 2.8 billion to 5.4 over the course of this 3-year fiscal plan. So 5.4 is getting up there. I think it's going to be the fourth largest ministry in government is the Ministry of Interest Payments. So that's why they need to get a handle on this runaway train here. Now let's talk about how they're trying to pay for it. There's two revenue measures that that are going to stand out. One is a PST increase on, well, it's not an increase in the rate, but they're extending the coverage of the PST to cover certain professional services, which includes accounting and engineering,
government
geoscientists.
consulting, that's a big area.
I didn't see government consulting mentioned in there, Geoff. The fine print.
It's always been
I don't
an
think you should
enigma to me
mention
why
that.
that
They
was
might give them
excluded.
ideas.
Yeah, I know.
The architects.
Yeah.
So, if you're a developer doing a big project and architect has a big bill, you're paying an extra 7%, or getting your accounting done, it's another 7%. Lawyers might sniff and say, well, we've had this legal tax for like 25 years. So, hey, accountants, it's your turn. But
And supposedly for the lawyers, it goes straight into assistance for
legal aid. Yeah.
legal aid. Yeah.
Well, I
But
guess I suppose indirectly it does. But
as I recall, they booked $250 million for this tax increase, which surprised me how much
it'll be 500 million by year
500
3, I think. Yeah, it's significant
It's a fair
increase in
amount
the
of money.
PST revenue.
Yeah.
So there'll be a lot of unhappy accountants, including mine. Then we've got an increase to the income tax rate for the lowest levels, going from 5.06 to 5.6. Doesn't seem like a big deal. Government says it'll cost the average household $76. The probably more substantial thing is they're freezing the brackets. So the brackets tended to rise with inflation over time. They're freezing the brackets so that basically they'll make more money on tax revenue by freezing the brackets. So
Oh, I see. This is the missing piece for me. I couldn't understand why you would even whisper that there might be an increase for lower income British Columbians, which is
yeah, I
what
mean
this
they
reads like.
claim that I can't remember the number. Zillions of people will be better off because of the budget, because of the low income stuff they're doing.
Because of the higher taxes, yeah.
Well, they've got some credit or something in there. I don't know. So on, I'll do dark side, light side here. Dark side is you got, in terms of the outlook, these labor deals are going to come home to roost. 3% on healthcare is not going to be enough in terms of managing as they are right now, let alone the rest of government having you mentioned public safety. How's that going to work? The one I haven't mentioned yet too is capital projects. They're
Right.
pushing them down the road. And so there's going to be the repacing of capital projects. Some projects have previously been announced to finish at X date. They're a year later, or maybe it's TBC. And one thing, yeah, go ahead.
I think this is just reflecting reality. It was even when during the Horgan period, there were years when the capital couldn't be moved out the door because there weren't enough companies available and skilled workers to build the stuff to conduct a proper bid on it. And so, the number looked excellent, but what was actually happening on the ground was a smaller number. So if they are lowering the number but getting it done, I think that's a good thing, and also it should help them reduce the pressures on pricing because they're not bidding so much stuff into the market and having that drive up costs. I mean, the reality with a hospital construction is that there are not that many contractors who are able to do such complex work, and there's specialized materials. A whole set of things tend to drive costs. So the couch in a hospital alone, I think, is 1.4 billion The new St. Paul's is way over $2 billion. So buying a hospital these days is not a small
Oh, it's got to be way
proposition.
more than two. The
Yeah,
Richmond hospital's two. Um,
I did have that
you know,
number here.
but the one thing that I know it's easier said than done, but
Yeah, you're right.
the capital projects have been way over budget.
Yeah.
And I know that there are reasons for that, whether it's scarcity of labor or cost of materials or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, you think those contingencies would be known up front, like there was a lot of focus, and you and I probably disagree on this, but, you know, 25 years ago in the Campbell administration, bringing in P3 model was meant to de-risk this cost overruns for projects and put that on the head of the P3 operator. Now, the P3 model has its failings, and it came a time when it wasn't appropriate, even when the BC Liberals were in. But I feel like recently these capital projects are kind of running amok, and I don't know what the answer is on that. Obviously, the wastewater project in the North Shore is a big one. That's probably the biggest example, but the Richmond Hospital, I think, is about doubled compared to what they expected. You mentioned Cowichan. And given the size of the capital budgets, like, do we need some process or some review or a new way of doing things to like
Well, I
go in
think
eyes wide open here?
your government left behind the Transportation Finance Authority, I think it was called.
Yeah,
It was a
Transportation Investment Corporation now.
right.
Yeah.
It was really a center of excellence and skills for
Yeah.
managing P3s, but continued in place with a very talented
Yeah.
group of people who would give advice about whether this should be design build or should be design build finance. And
Yeah.
those discussions continue. If you look at the capital numbers in the budget, you can
Yeah.
still see which ones are P3s. But I think the size of some of these projects and their unique nature is what's been causing some of the difficulties. I mean, in the Cowichan one, there were issues over how green to make it, how much to have it
Mhm.
low emissions, and then there were other factors there.
Yeah,
The
there's a lot
St.
getting
Paul's
loaded into
one,
these projects.
pardon me,
There's a lot getting loaded into these projects.
there is, yeah, there is, and I think as technology changes too, it's hard to build them so that they're resilient to technological change. Like the Vancouver
Mm.
General Hospital towers were built with an in-between floor at each level, so that all the utilities could be changed over time, but the structure remains intact. I think
Mm.
something like that happened at St. Paul's. I don't think there's a big story here. There's still going to be a ton of money spent and a lot of ribbons to cut. The question for me politically about the budget overall is how will it fare in the House over the next period? Because none of the opposition groups, parties, whatever they are going to vote for it. So
Mhm.
Ross Johan is going to have to be on speed dial. He's going to really need to be sleeping in his office, I think, to make sure that this gets through, because I don't see the Greens under their new posture supporting any of it. The Cargo deal was wound up. That was another thing that happened very quickly in the last couple of weeks.
Mhm.
You were trying to remember what Cargo stood for, and now I'm asking myself the same question. But it was basically the confidence and supply agreement.
Confidence and blah blah blah.
So yeah, and it's over. Some of the things that Emily Lowen would have liked to see in this budget are not there. There's nothing here to trouble an oligarch in any way, shape, or form. And then on the conservative
Oh
side, of
no, the
course,
oligarchs have been targeted, Geoff. I believe there's a special tax on those owning homes over $3 million.
that's right. Well, that's an enormously popular tax.
The
So
oligarch
that's a
tax.
safe one. Yeah. So they'll probably let that go by, but there's other things they don't like. Well, just a couple other outliers. One thing I couldn't find in the paper anywhere, it's there somewhere, but there was a recent campaign launched by the Van City Community Foundation, which was the agency that operated the BC Rent Bank. The Rent Bank was a endowed arrangement that helped people in trouble avoid eviction. And it averted thousands of people becoming homeless. And that was documented by external reviews and so on. So the Horgan government put some money into it. Then subsequently, the Eby government did. They were worried they would get no money. I can't find out if they did get any money.
Hmm.
If they didn't, that will be, I think, a political problem. I was watching childcare. I also wanted to see what was happening for Indigenous, Indigenous projects, because there was very little mention in the budget of reconciliation or anything like that, except in an economic context. But
Yeah, in
there
the
were
economic
modest
context.
cuts there,
Yeah.
modest cuts there in Indigenous relations in the ministry itself. And the Declaration Act Secretariat lost $400,000 or something, but not I guess a flesh wound, but nothing mortal. So there was not big changes there, but I think all of this turmoil will contribute to a loss of productivity in a public service that already feels pretty beleaguered.
Well, on the bright side,
Yeah.
on the bright side,
I can't leave
is
the whole bright side to you, Mike. I'll have
is
to be
that
honest.
the economic forecasts, the growth forecasts are fairly conservative, I hope. And projects that have not been finalized yet, like Phase 2 LNG Canada, Silism's LNG, some of the big mining projects, they have not been accounted for in the growth forecast. So if those projects hit, especially the LNG ones,
Yeah.
and because those come with associated pipeline infrastructure as well, and then God knows what there's no oil pipeline, that can have a very beneficial impact on growth. Maybe a point,
On
half a
revenue
point, a
growth.
point.
Well,
Yeah.
on GDP growth and on
Well, on
revenue
GDP
growth.
growth, but which will manifest itself in revenue growth.
So they are hoping for an increase in the price of natural gas, and small
Yeah.
increases produce a lot more revenue to the government. And
Yeah, natural
arguably those
gas.
royalties
Natural
are
gas
low.
is a bright spot in this budget. The revenue, big revenue increase for natural gas, big revenue increase for mining revenues as well. So that's the bright spot. Is that, and it explains why I think Premier Eby's been running around touting and Minister Callon these major projects to get some big wins on the board, to get some momentum going in this economy. Because they do need to bend the curve here. It's going in the wrong direction. So the other thing I noticed is there's a pretty big contingency in this budget. It's $5 billion. And if they didn't have to spend it, that'd be a significant.
It was $4 billion last time, right?
Yeah, but they spent the $4 billion, and I expect they will spend the 5. But if they didn't, if they came short on the contingency, they'd have room. They'd have room to move. I just hope come March 31st, 2027, and there's $2 billion left in that contingency, they don't feel like they need to spend it. Yeah, they can just give it back because it's all borrowed anyways. So, like, big picture here, like, it's a mess, in my opinion. Folks, we cannot afford the level of spending we have today. It's unsustainable. It's going to cause a problem that our next generation is going to have to deal with. They have to pay for it. So I would like to see government bend it down faster, which could be more painful, or it could be more bullish on the revenue side in terms of economic growth, or God knows what. But I feel like the medicine that's been given us today is insufficient for the condition.
Well, I would argue the other way, that we should grow the economy faster. And
I'm not arguing against that.
Well, I don't think there's a way to bend down spending and that would make a substantive difference, except to cause more political difficulties. I think, we've had a good employment performance so far in spite of Trump and everything else. We do have these mines that are coming along quite quickly. We do have opportunities on LNG. I think a sincere effort to increase the cut within the total allowable cut in the forest sector would also be extremely beneficial to revenues. I think we should try to curb the growth of the public sector and reduce it where we can by voluntary measures, and do that as quickly and as effectively as possible. But I think there's reason to be optimistic that things will improve, especially given the fact that objectively, especially if we're able to reduce the rate of growth in the debt, that we're currently not in a disastrous situation by any means by comparison to other jurisdictions. We can't get worse. We should continue where we are, and that's going to be a big challenge in and of itself. But I would tend to agree with your first comment. None of these messages, and maybe they were in the throne speech we never will get to hear, but none of these messages were in a coherent and very clear way in the budget. Brenda Bailey said, "I'm going to do 3 things," and she did all of them to a degree. and they haven't amounted to a breakthrough. Certainly, I think the media commentary is going to be quite negative because people are focused exclusively on the deficit.
And I don't think Minister Bailey can sell this effectively. He'll be on the Premier's shoulders. And the results aren't great, obviously. I mean, they've admitted that themselves, as I said earlier, that things got too big in the public sector. Now they got to pare it back. But I I agree. I don't think this is going to be a political disaster, but I, in a way, I feel like they may not recover from this either. Like I feel like this is almost an acknowledgement that they can't turn it around, because we're gonna have a $13 billion deficit this year, and there's no tobacco settlement that's going to make it feel better this year.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to need help from the economy, and they're going to need help from revenue growth to get people feeling like things are going back in the right direction. Things could get worse, folks. Like they maybe Trump's got another curveball for us, and maybe this or maybe that, but maybe there's a natural disaster, right?
In the platitudes of the throne speech, and I admit there's usually platitudes there. You would have seen a sketch of what the legislative agenda was, and we haven't seen that. All we know for sure is the government wants to bring in amendments to the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, which is very controversial and not going to garner them support in any part of the House. So this day is behind the government, and I'm sure everybody in Victoria on the government benches is relieved that it's behind them. But there's lots of tests to come. And I think the budget debate will be interesting. Everybody is going to have to be on their toes because it's a given, I think, that Ross Chohan will have to carry this one across the line this weekend
Well,
as tiebreaker.
In the lockup, there's lots of stakeholders there, so I'll cherry pick some comments, probably a little unfairly because I didn't find a lot of friends of the government amidst me, in my midst. Bridget Anderson, the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade, usually provide a letter grade every year, and this year it was a D. However, I want to recast that vote because in the report cards that my daughter receives, you either get extending, proficient, or developing. So I'm going to give the government developing as a mark because that's their own grade scale. I might be missing one below developing actually. So it definitely was not extending. Carson Binda from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, who is a regular listener to Hotel Pacifico, likened the budget to a bone-dry forest in August, whereupon Brenda Bailey flicked a lit cigarette out the window. Colorful metaphor.
Mm-hmm. From a perennial critic, yeah.
And very much so. And the upright corporate defenders, the BC Business Council, said debt servicing is the fastest growing line item and provincial finances are on track for a fifth consecutive credit rating downgrade, a budget that fails to meet the moment. Now, about the credit downgrade, it feels to me like this can be a credit downgrade. I don't know where we're at or if we're as low as the PEI potatoes at this point, but
no, we're okay. We're okay.
Are we above the potato level?
Oh yeah.
Above potato level. So we're kind of like at Saskatchewan grain level. So that's just, I think probably the budget was designed to do enough not to get a serious haircut. Maybe they know enough from the credit ratings that this was prudent enough, I'm thinking. But I don't know. I don't know how.
Well, we'll see. I mean, the province of Alberta is warning that it's going to have a much larger deficit than forecast because oil prices are down. So the credit ratings have to achieve some consistency across all of the jurisdictions they're watching.
Well, I mean, the reality is it just increases the cost of borrowing. Mm-hmm. The rates aren't as good, and that leads, to a spiral. So, so there it is. There we have it.
I think we both need a drink.
Well, what do you have? What do you have on tap?
Well, I'm going to refer back to a previous Hotel Pacifico and raise a glass to Richard Zussman. Not that he needs any more props from our show. We're constantly fanboying Richard Zussman, but he forecast the upset politically of the year would be the election of William Azeroff as mayor of Vancouver. And I think the rest of us on that
He hasn't been
podcast.
elected mayor yet, Geoff.
No, I know. But at that point, he wasn't even nominated, but he did win a pretty decisive win at the one city nominating convention last week to become their nominee for mayor. So
who is this coalition? Who is the types of people that showed up? First of all, like it was 1,200 to 900 or something, and like that's kind of impressive. The numbers that came out to vote for one city. I'll
yeah,
say
it was
that
87% turnout.
87%.
Everybody, no stone was left unturned. Well, I think it's an amalgam of people. Looking in the crowd, I see lots of familiar
The
faces.
13% that didn't vote were all up in Cortez for the weekend.
I guess so. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. They were at some kind of I won't say. Anyway, the
yoga retreat.
I won't
Okay, I'm
generalize.
Stereotyping. Sorry. Apologies, one city.
I see
Apologies.
familiar faces from Federal Liberal
From the movement.
Municipal Works. I see NDP people. I see some Labor people. See a lot of people interested in urban stuff. A younger generation folks coming along. And Azeroff defeated Amanda Burrows from the First United Church as her day job.
Did he have a particular coalition behind him? Like, was there a particular group that was really going full guns for him?
Well, he was endorsed by Mike Harcourt, former NDP premier, but also had some lots of endorsements from housing and community service work. He has a background. Works in housing now himself, but previously
he's CEO is CEO, I think, of Brightside,
exactly.
Big nonprofit housing developer. Yeah.
So not a well-known name. He wasn't, and yet Richard Zussman picked him out of the crowd. And so we'll see if Zussman's instincts are correct as this campaign moves forward. It's going to be an interesting one. So here's to Zussman.
I think William Azeroff, he wrote a book recently too, which
I didn't know that.
I think it's like what he learned in film school or something like that. Like I'll have to have a look at it. So yeah, interesting guy. So how do you think it's going to work with him and Pete Fry both running?
Well, today Azeroff threw down the gauntlet and said to Cope and the Greens that they've been talking about a people's primary to pick one anti-Sim candidate. And he said, okay, that's an interesting idea. Let's get it done in the next 45 days. So it's kind
Pete, Pete will get fried.
I think so. Anyway, one city has said we're feeling
if they got
good.
2,100 people out to a nomination, I mean, the Greens aren't getting 2,100 people out behind Pete Fry. Like, that's not the nature of their civic party.
Well, one city has said, an Azeroff person, I said, if this is going to happen, let's get it on.
I want to get this out
of the way.
Don't do it.
12 at least 12 people say they want to be nominated for one city council spots, which is, and not to shine too much of a light on Vancouver, we are seeing a lot of turnover or potential turnover in civic politics across the province. I mean, in Surrey, we're going to see that. I guess Mike Hurley's
Tough Grandma. You may not see Tough Grandma. She might survive there.
She might survive, but she's being challenged. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, she's up for a challenge. Tough Grandma's up for a challenge. Absolutely. She has challenges every day. She's fighting back those extortionists and everything.
Trying to get some attention for Surrey, which has been left behind for so long. But anyway, I think it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out here.
Well, I mean, I'm going back to Vancouver, if I'm Pete Fry, I just here's my opinion poll. Who are you? I'm Pete Fry. See you later, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, we'll see how those two work it out. Mini bar for me. Well, I think this is probably on behalf of you as well, Geoff. I will raise a glass to the people of Tumbler Ridge and everyone who's gone through that in the last week, and the long road to recovery for the victims, both those injured, but also those injured psychologically, and all the families that are involved. So, these events make what we talk about most times in the podcast kind of irrelevant when these big events happen. You just push all that aside and focus on what's important. So,
yeah. No, thank you for saying that. I totally agree.
Yeah, we will. Though I very much enjoyed your discussion. We will check back on Tumbler Ridge in the weeks ahead. Anyways, thank you to all of our listeners for stopping by Hotel Pacifico today. Thanks, Geoff, for showing up for work this week. And thanks to our sponsors for allowing us to bring this episode to you for free. We'll see you next week. if we're still in business and the province hasn't gone broke. BC, you can never leave.
Well, I'll be here, Mike. Come on.